Welcome to another one of our leadership lessons, and I have one of my JC heroes. And Stan, I will tell you, when I was a district director, I would put on your hours of power tape, and I wore that sucker out. And I got to tell you, sometimes you would drive down, and you know this story because you did it too. You would drive like 3 hours, and there would be four people. You expected to have this huge crowd, and there's four people,
Sure.
and you get back in the car to drive back home, but you put in one of those power tapes and you realize why you did what you did. So, but I've got Stan Shaw, and Stan, again, one of my JC heroes. You were a Charles Kulp Memorial Award. For people who may not know who that is, that was one of the most outstanding local presidents in America. I think 1982 from Macon, Georgia.
Correct.
Yep. And just fantastic. Your year as a local president, I think what'd you do, about 32, 33 extensions?
32 extensions, and we grew from 66 to 183 members.
Yeah. And for people who don't know what an extension is, of course, that's starting a brand new chapter. And you did it a little bit differently because we used to go door knocking, and you worked a lot of that from the phone.
Absolutely.
Explain how you developed this concept of starting a JC chapter. And if you were starting a new chapter of anything today, how would you recommend going about that?
Yeah, I think the approach is the same. I guess when, of course, I'd never been to a new chapter extension before. When Tommy Todd sent me to do one, I had to kind of wing it on my own a little bit. This was one of those lack of training situations, but I went to an area. I talked to a chapter down there, and I said, "Do me a favor, talk to key and influential people in your area, mayor, council people, business leaders, just store owners, whatever, and tell them a little bit about our organization, about our creed, what we're all about, and that what we're trying to do is to identify some outstanding young people in the community between our age group, which that time was 18 to 36 and is now 40, with the expectation that, we would help develop those people. And in the process of our development, we had active development that we didn't only teach, we also got them out there and they did things. And those things that they did improve the community. So it was beneficial for those leaders because they could see their successes blooming, and they could also see an opportunity to find somebody that maybe somewhere down the road might take their place. So they would basically give us a list of names and phone numbers, and we would sit down at a phone and start contacting these people. And initially, we would explain to them, I'm with the Macon Georgia Jaycees. I'm here with a group of people from such and such JC chapter, and we're trying to form a new organization. And what we're looking for is people that have values and capabilities, and an aspiration to grow and get better at what they do. And we provide the tools to help get them that. And what we're doing is creating a charter member. So you are charter, a new organization. So you have an opportunity to be one of the first 20 people that we select. And it's my referral. The mayor, Bill Russell, told me to give you a call and suggested that you're the type of person I'd be looking for.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts? Well, two things. They're pretty likely to turn me down, but they're not as likely to turn the mayor down.
That's right.
So they would say, well, tell me a little bit more. Sounds interesting. What do I need to do? And I would say, well, that's really pretty easy. If you believe in the values that we believe in, and you have an interest in pursuing this and want to be a part of that charter group, then come down to the mayor's office, bring me a check for $29 or whatever it was at the time. And I'd like to meet you and put you on our rolls. Once we get to 20 people, we'll actually set up an initial meeting and kind of go from there. And to my surprise, and to Tommy Todd's surprise, and a lot of other people's surprise, I'd get off the phone. They'd say, "You're never going to see that guy again." And I said, I guarantee you they're going to show up. Sure enough, 10 minutes later, they'd drive up in their car and say, "Stan Shaw here." And I'd say, "I'm him." And they'd say, "Well, I brought my check down." and we'd kick it off. And I think the key for the success was looking for good people and through referrals.
Yeah.
And this have a meeting and people show up usually was surrounded with people providing free beer or other reasons to come. And I wanted their reason to be that they cared about their community. And 32 new chapters that year, and probably another 20 nationwide after that, were all formed the same way. So,
and of course, for people who may not know, Tommy Todd was national president. Was it 83?
84, 85.
84, 85. Yeah. Stan, if you were creating a brand new service organization or civic organization today, what would be the first steps to ensure success and sustainability, no matter what kind of club it was?
Well, again, I have a foundational belief that the people today, the young people today, while you do have some outliers who have crazy and different thoughts or different opinions, that a huge majority of the young people in that age group have the same values that we had when we were there.
Right.
They believe in God. They believe in their country. They believe in government of laws. They believe in serving their fellow man, and all of the things that the JC Creed believes in, and that's the kind of people I'm looking for.
Right.
And I think if we can find those people with those values, they're going to have an interest in leaving a world a better place than they found it. And that becomes, to me, the foundation for any organization, whether it's Jaycees, Kiwanis, Rotary, or whoever, that they have the ability to do that.
How would you define a successful civic organization in today's world? And how's that definition changed since your days in the Macon Jaycees?
I think things are a little bit more difficult today than they were because, first of all, with technology, with social media, with every different kind of situation you have businesses that are teaching leadership, you have organizations that are putting on seminars, you have a lot of competition for what you're doing. Uh-huh. And so I think, again, the key is finding who those first 20 people are. And people said, so you pick 20 leaders. And I said, not necessarily, because you can't have 20 quarterbacks.
That's right.
What you need is a significant part of them that have leadership skills that, are the capability to learn them pretty quickly. But you also have some people that are like the blockers and the linemen that sit there and say, I've got a role to play, and mine may be a little bit more physical, like doing some of the work than planning the thing we're going to run what play we're going to run this time. So I think the organizations today, like I say, are faced with such rapid change in technology and whatever that they do. They've got to find the right people and they've got to involve them. The other thing is, I've got a 5-year-old grandson, and I was thinking as I was looking through the questions that, gosh, when I was a kid, we used to play things like shooting marbles and little things that didn't require a lot of aptitude. My 5-year-old was over here the other day, and he whips out his iPad, and in 20 minutes he built an entire city on his iPad and destroyed aliens from a foreign world all in the same time frame. So their mind works a lot faster, and they're looking for that instant gratification a lot more than we were when we were children. So I think we have to be able to think in 2025 and 2030, realizing that artificial intelligence is going to end up giving us a lot of the answers to the questions you're asking me right now, by pulling together the minds of a lot of people smarter than me. So,
Stan, you not only had a very successful JC career, you had a very successful professional career in human resources with Georgia Pacific and International Paper. Looking at that experience and leadership development, what are some of the most overlooked leadership traits that young professionals need to cultivate today?
I think number one is you're faced with a situation that you've got to look at everybody as important. Mm-hmm. I see so many young people, and did throughout my career, that if they wanted to be leaders, they felt like they had to play up to the top. They had to impress their boss or their boss's boss or whatever, but they didn't get along with the coworkers, or they didn't get along with the employee out in the mill that was making the product. And when it came down to crunch time, those people could make them or break them. And I don't think that's changed a lot. I think and I use the term pretty often, this concept of servant leadership. And servant leadership doesn't only apply to people above. It applies to everybody in your organization. How do you help them to be successful? I had a guy that I worked with was doing some consulting in the past, and he made a comment one day that stuck with me. He said, there's very few kings, but there's a lot of king makers. and I've kind of viewed myself over the years as I was too old at the time that I was Jaycee local chapter president to aspire to be a national president or international president. So I said, that's not going to be an option for me. So how do you use the skills and the abilities you have to potentially help other people to be successful? And if you can help them to be successful, you've been blessed. You've accomplished what you wanted to accomplish.
You did that. In 1991, you encouraged then National President Greg Thomas from Minnesota, and then later myself the next year, to veer away from the traditional training that we had at JOTS with our state officers and national officers to something we call modular training. If you were implementing modular training, what modules would you emphasize most today?
Again, I think one of them in my mind has to be servant leadership. The second has to be interpersonal skills, because I talk again about how do you accomplish the things you need to do when you're in a voluntary organization. You don't have any command and control. So if you're gonna get something accomplished, it's got to be through influence versus demand. Yeah. Communication skills we've talked about probably for the last hundreds of years. But I think if you have difficulty communicating your thoughts and your ideas, that's difficult. But you also have to have the ability to listen effectively, because in human resources, I dealt with a lot of unions. I dealt with a lot of different people, and when you went in with your position and your situation, and you had your mind made up, the outcome didn't turn out very well. I remember one arbitration case where the union came in and presented their case, and I talked to 3 supervisors, 2 managers, and 4 coworkers about their grievance and why they took the position they took, and it was completely different from what the union presented. So I called for a break, got those people that I talked to before in a room, and I said, one of you is lying to me, either the union or y'all. Tell me which one it is. And they started kind of shuffling their feet, and they said, well, it's kind of like they said. And I went back to the meeting and I said, this grievance is over. It's granted. We didn't have the facts we need to have, and it's done. And I think the union was shocked that they'd gone that far in the process, and that within 10 minutes they had won their grievance, and they didn't have to have the arbitrator to even award it for them. So listening and understanding and trying to seek an understanding of what other people think and why they're thinking it's pretty important.
And you just touched on this in the question before, but young people today, they're pulled in so many directions in their careers, digital distractions, social pressure. How can we get young people today, 21 to 39, to see the value of the servant leadership that you just talked about?
Yeah, and it's not just servant leadership. I think I thought about this thing, and I started kind of coming to the conclusion about that child that you took on a Christmas shopping tour, and I did probably 4 of them, that you gave what was probably $50 then, that's probably 100 now, and another 100 came out of your pocket that the chapter didn't give you, made such an impact on your life, at that night. The kid that you took to go get his haircut for the first time, that had never had one because his family couldn't afford to do it, and all they did was kind of chop it up. Those things in life that people care about, that they truly, that are impactful. You've got to get people to see and understand and realize those things. And one more quick example. I remember one of the chapters that I extended, and we were having a session with them trying to teach them about what Jaycees were all about. And one of the things that I did in conjunction with that meeting was say, we're going to have a session, kind of a brainstorming on ideas of projects that we might run and things that we might do. And I want you to think about something that's probably not going to cost much money, might cost a lot of work, but it's going to have a pretty big impact, and people can visually see it and feel good about it. And this one guy said, man, I got this park down the street, and it's been here 100 years, but it is overrun with weeds. The swings are broken. They need painting. It looks like trash and whatever. And I said, well, let's go to the Parks Department and see if they would allow us to go clean it up and fix it up, knowing that they would, because that meant they didn't have to use their labor. And the one thing that we asked for was, can we put up a sign in front of that park that it was renovated in 1983 by the Thompson Jaycees? And they said, oh, heck yeah, I don't care. Do we have to buy the sign? No, we'll provide the sign. You can look at it, see it looks, it's not going to be junky. It's not going to just be something like that. And that guy was all over that project. He wanted to do it. They went and did it. They put up their sign, and that organization got a kickstart that not every one of them, typically got. So
right.
Again, I go back to people's hearts are the same. Their skill set and their ability to do things may be different, but that's kind of the purpose of whatever organization we have, whether it's Rotary or Jaycees or Kiwanis or whatever, is kind of help take that idea that they have that's their own, make it their own, and help show them the skill sets to accomplish what they need to do. And when they do, you've accomplished what you need to accomplish.
Our resources may be different, but the heart's still the same.
Yep, absolutely.
What advice would you give to a 25-year-old that wants to make a difference in their community, but they don't know quite where to start?
I think I would start with, what are you passionate about? If you could make one difference in the community, if you could make one difference in a school system, if you could make one difference in some area, what would that look like? And if I can see that passion, if I can see that spark, and then talk about how do I connect them up with someone either in our organization or somewhere else that can help them accomplish that situation, just like the kid with the park. I think that's kind of what the keys are to that. Everybody's got something that they've seen, done, or wondered about, why hasn't that happened before? And if we can just listen long enough again, and get them to thinking out loud, I think we can find what that thing is. And if we can get it started, they'll find some other things they thought about later to perpetuate them.
You know, Stan, you did 30 something extensions as a local president. I only did three. You grew your chapter, how many for what was it?
66 to 183.
I went from 76 to 183. That's weird that we ended up at 183, but 76 to 183. But one of the things that we heard 40 years ago, and you'd still hear today, is I'm too busy. I don't have the time to be involved. Somebody else will do it. How do we get people to overcome that mindset to become that emerging leader?
Well, I mentioned something a minute ago. I said that a few years from now we can probably go online to artificial intelligence and ask that same question, and they'll be able to give us an answer. So I cheated a little bit, and I went on to Chat GPT, and I just asked that question. I said, "What do you do? People have got so many things pulled in so many different areas. How does an organization adapt to this generation and all of those things?" And they came out with a number of different ideas. Number one is they said, don't make all your members sit through a long meeting.
Oh, that's right.
They said,
Yeah.
the board needs to conduct business. Members need to generate ideas, talk about successes, and socialize with each other. And so they said, when you have a meeting, set the business portion of it as no more than 15 minutes and 45 minutes of social time, just talking about what's going on in the community. What do you see? How do we make it better? If you could do something to make Rock Hill better as a community, what would you do? What are you seeing in those things? And I think that the second is you kind of have to find out what's important to them. And if I can just take a moment to give you an example,
Yeah, please.
because this happened right after I got out of Jaycees. I was working in Macon, Georgia. I figured I'd spend the rest of my life in Georgia. And the company I worked for was a company called Georgia Craft Company. It was a subsidiary of Mead Corporation out of Dayton, Ohio, and Inland Container Corporation out of Indianapolis, Indiana. And they had three mills. One was in Rome, Georgia, one was in Eufaula, Alabama, and one was in Macon. Well, my boss came into my office one day and said, I know you're not going to believe this, but he said, because I couldn't. He said, but this company we've been working for 40 years, or that's been partners for 40 years. The new CEOs don't like each other, and they've decided to dissolve this company. And the mill in Rome is going to go to Mead. The mill in Eufaula is going to go to Inland, and they're going to sell our plant. We're going to try to buy it. We've still got to run it, but we also have to entertain buyers. And we went through that process, and a guy out of Australia named Richard Pratt bought the plant. Mm-hmm. So I was suddenly in a situation where I wasn't independently wealthy. I had to have a job to support my family. And I'd built some relationships with a company called Georgia Pacific, and they contacted me knowing that I was going to be out of work at the end of a year. They kept me on it, kept all the management team on for a year with a retention bonus. But they said, "Look, we've got a plant we'd like for you to go to work for as HR manager. It's our biggest operation in the world. There's 1,600 employees in this facility. And you have a staff of like 14 people, which is about 3 times what I had in Macon." And they said, "Wonder if you'd be interested." Well, I said, "Well, I don't know much about southeast Arkansas, but go take a look." And they said, "Well, before you go, let me just tell you a couple of things. Number one is Crossett, Arkansas has 6,000 people in the whole community." And you've been in a metropolitan area. So that's going to be a bit of a culture shock for you. And the second thing is, in 1985, which is 3 years before, we had a major ugly strike with this union and with the 3 unions there. And they hate the company and they hate each other. He said, in addition to a 90-day strike, we ended up hiring permanent replacements. We gave permanent replacements to top jobs. And so anytime people that were either returning strikers or permanent replacements gathered together, there was usually some type of fight or conflict that took place. So I started shaking my head and said, I'm not sure if I want this job or not. But, the good Lord pressed upon my heart that was something I needed to do. And so I went to CrossFit Arkansas, and I started looking at how in the world are you going to, I mean, we had churches that broke up. We had businesses that broke up because they were partners that had relatives that were on one side of that equation or another. And a lady by the name of Barbara Gates, who was the assistant superintendent of schools, came to me and said, we're thinking we need to put an adoptive school program in the Ashley County schools here, and wanted to know if GP would go work it, and would you be a co-chairman with me on it? And I said yes. So we started thinking about the situation, and I said, how many businesses do we have in the community? She said, we have 200. And I said, well, gosh, wouldn't it be neat if we could get anywhere close to 200? She said, you'll be lucky if we get 100, but if we could get 100, just think of what we could do. I said, well, how would you use it? She said, well, we'll get one of them to donate a haircut. We'll get one of them to donate 5 gallons of gas, and different people would donate different things. Plus, we would ask them to come sit in the classrooms periodically to be involved. So it'll get the community businesses involved in that situation. So we got ready to have our first meeting, a kickoff meeting to introduce to the community our adopt school idea. And I said, we need to fill this auditorium up. How many people does it hold? And she said, we've gotten, I don't know. She said, we've probably gotten a couple of hundred in here before, but she said, technically, I think it'll seat probably 700 or 800. Standing room only maybe 1,000 people. So I said, okay, well, how do we get people here? And she said, we're going to have each of the kids in the classroom make a poster, and they're going to come in. We're going to walk them in to the auditorium, classroom by classroom, from first grade to high school, and they're going to come in and do a little introduction to their school. It probably won't take but just 30 seconds, and this is what we're going to do. And I said, she said, because if the kids come, the parents have to come. I said, man, I like that idea. So we invited the governor to come speak. Well, the governor of Arkansas at the time was a guy by the name of Bill Clinton. And you know that Bill Clinton, regardless of what you say, was an inspirational speaker.
Oh, he was fantastic.
And when he walked in that room and saw standing room only 1,000 people, he just fell out all over himself. And he said, the first thing he says, I can't believe this. He said, I've been to meetings of political groups, that had everything in the world at stake and haven't had crowds like this in Arkansas. And he said, if you've got this much enthusiasm, this is going to be great. So we got a kickoff. We ended up with 190 businesses out of 200. And something happened. Number one, those employees started focusing on their kids because you would have, it wasn't just who was the brightest, who was the smartest, who was the most accomplished. It was the kid that made the most improvement from the last quarter. And we had things donated. A guy named Dick Reynolds donated a car for seniors that had a driver's license. They could have a car for a quarter and 3 months, and they could drive it, and he would insure the car. Yeah. And so, boy, they would drive around in a car. Some of them, the parents didn't even have cars, and the little girl that went to a spa for 6 hours and had her hair done, or the girl that got a prom dress that never been to a prom, and it. The one thing that I could say that it did was it created a diversion.
Right.
And so, I think that those are the kind of things that kind of get you excited and help you to understand. If you look hard enough, you can find a lot of answers to a lot of issues. And that was one of those answers.
Yeah. Stan, you've seen communities and civic organizations evolve over the decades. What challenges do today's civic leaders face that perhaps we didn't 30 or 40 years ago? And how should they adopt to them?
Yeah, I mean, I think that our world today is somewhat strange,
Mhm.
and I think politics plays a role in it because we are divided in many ways, and so trying to find and that's one of the reasons I use the example I just did about a hostile union group and a company that basically said I'll you do me bad, I'm going to do you bad, and we live in a world like that today.
Sure.
And I think one of the things that organizations have to do is, how do you figure out a way to get away from the noise? I've heard football coach after football coach talk about going into a game and chatter about such and such and you know what this player is going to do and that player does. And the first thing they said is, look, we got to block out the noise. We got to focus on what's important to us, what our mission is, and get people to think only on that. And I think it's the same thing for our organizations today. I think we've got to know what we do very well, what's important to our outcome as an organization. We've got to find those success stories, and we've got to get those out in front of the people, so that's what they're hearing and seeing. And all the noise that goes around beyond it, we've got to cut out and push it away. And if we can do that, I think we've got an opportunity to have successful organizations.
Stan, looking back on your JC journey and your professional career in human resources, what legacy do you hope to leave, and what kind of legacy should any civic leader aim for today?
I think civic leaders have a lot of different expectations of what they want to see from it. You know, Robbie Dawkins knew when he was a district director that he wanted to be a national president. I believe. I mean, just being around Robbie, and quite frankly, people like yourself, Robbie, and Tom, other people, you knew when you saw them and you met them that they were going to have an impact and that they were going to accomplish things. And the key was to keep them believing in themselves and help showing them a way to achieve what they want to achieve. When people would come and talk to me, I was a local chapter president, and I kind of played upon that a little bit, as but I did it purposefully to try to tell other local chapter presidents out there, hey, I'm just a local chapter president. I've never been a state president. I've never been a national vice president. Never been a state president. And yet I've got people inviting me to junior officers training school to teach national vice presidents. I mean, state presidents and state vice presidents. I've spoken at 2 hours of power, and I'm only a local chapter president. So if I can do it, you can do it. And so it's, if there's anything that, from a legacy perspective, I hope I'd leave behind, is that some of the people that I met, some of the people that I came in contact with, learned something, picked up something, was inspired by something or whatever, to the point that they said, God, I think I can do that. I believe I can accomplish that. And they go try, and surprise, it worked. They were successful. And, I'll never forget the number of people and the calls that I've gotten over the years when I was active with the Jaycees, of people that would call me and say, you know that JC chapter that we started when you were in here on this trip, and we had like 10 names, man, in 2 hours. And he says, and this was like 2 days later, and he says, we got the other 10 tonight, and we really did this. And I said, I knew you would, no doubt. And they said, well, the system worked. And I said, well, no, the system was good. We had a good organizational scheme and a good sales program, but it was based on an organization that had good values. And it was people like Bill Russell who were out there saying, I'm going to make a difference. And in making a difference, I'm going to become a person that I want to be. And you did. And I'm very proud of you for that.
Lastly, Stan, if you could go back in time and give a young Stan Shaw, who was at the top of his game in Macon, Georgia, some advice, what would you say to that guy?
I looked at that one and I struggled with that a little bit and kind of came up with this. I mean, this thought. Um, don't let yourself get in your way.
Yeah.
You know, I said a minute ago talking about doing extensions and talking about speaking at hours of power and whatever, and I would catch myself at times thinking, "Boy, you're good," and whenever I thought, "Boy, you're good," I'd get bad, uh, you know, and so it became an issue of saying, "Look, this isn't about you. You didn't come to Rock Hill, South Carolina, or to anywhere else to try to impress them about what you did. You came there to teach them and to develop them and to share ideas that maybe they can use so that they can be successful." And I used this term earlier in the presentation, but you know, I think if I could end my legacy saying, I believe I was a king maker more than a king, I think I'd feel good about myself and what I did.
I remember the times I would get in my car and Honda Accord and drive halfway across the state and to a membership night that I'm going to be speaking at. I'm expecting there's probably going to be 12 to 20 guests. I'm wondering how many I'm going to close on, and I get there and there are no guests, and maybe there's 6 people in the room, and you go like, oh my. And then you drive back to Rock Hill that 3 hours. It's 1 o'clock, 1:30 in the morning, but you put on that hours of power tape, and it reminds you of why you do what you do. And I can't tell you, Stan, the number of times that I listened to the tapes from you and Najar and all the rest of them, Terrell Bechtel. I mean, just fantastic speakers. But you really did impact me, and I've said it time and time again. You were one of my JC heroes. I think the world of you, and I thank you for the impact that you made, not only in Macon and in Arkansas, but across this country.
Well, and know this, and I appreciate those comments, but likewise, I watched Bill Russell grow, and I watched you accomplish things, and the enthusiasm you had. And I'll tell you, you're as much a hero for me as I am for you. I can assure you.
Thank you, Stan. Really
Thank you,
appreciate it.
Bill.